Welcome to Talent Unfiltered. Located at the intersection of innovation and all things talent. Talent Unfiltered is presented by HireWorks. HireWorks. Talent forward. Now, here is your host, Ron Godier.
It is March 16th, 2020, and you are looking at Chicago, my hometown, and there is Wrigley Field. It is a quieter Monday than usual due to everything that's going on with the coronavirus outbreak. But more on that in a few minutes. But for now, welcome to Talent Unfiltered, wherever you may be listening or watching from. We are presented by HireWorks. I'm your host, Ron Godier. Now, Talent Unfiltered will hopefully educate and entertain you at the same time. We intend to focus on the future of work and what that means to be on that path. We are going to bring you subject matter experts and thought leaders in their field to give you practical things you can take back to your company and put to use. We're going to cover everything from recruitment marketing through people analytics and people data. We'll touch on RPA, RPO, and all the things in between, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun along the way. Now, the show is very easy to connect with. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat. The show is also available on Spotify, iTunes, Buzzsprout, and SoundCloud. And there's a video version on YouTube. Just search Talent Unfiltered. The links to our social media and platforms are in the comments section below. We hope you'll connect with us soon. And don't forget, if you like what you see, then like, subscribe, and share on whatever platform you are catching us on. I'm really excited about our first guest on this maiden voyage, if you will, of the show. And that guest is none other than Lou Adler, CEO of the Adler Group. But before we get going, I want to take a few minutes and I want to talk about what I am sure is on the mind of everyone, and that is the coronavirus, the COVID-19 outbreak. This is something that has impacted people, businesses, events in a much more broad way than I think we had probably suspected it would. As much as it affects business, as much as it affects a networking event that you might be going to, or a sporting event that you're looking forward, or we're looking forward to, this has a very human component to it. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of concern as it relates to how this is going to impact my daily life. Will it affect my job? Will I lose my job? And let's not be mistaken. There are going to be a lot of companies out there, particularly smaller ones, that are not going to be able to withstand the volatility that comes with a situation like this. Regardless of what your political beliefs are, it does feel like we are behind the eight ball in terms of response. Many of my clients, people that I consult to, are making arrangements to protect their workers by having everybody work from home, which is clearly the right choice. I do think, however, that this puts some companies who aren't necessarily ready for that, ready for an entirely remote workforce. It kind of puts them behind the eight ball in terms of understanding what that will mean to them, how their business processes will act. And I think that it could go two ways. Number one, I think that it could have a really positive effect by showing people that working remotely isn't necessarily as scary or as bad as they might think. Secondly, I think it has the opportunity to make us reevaluate our jobs, reevaluate what's important, and think about work and the future of work maybe in a little bit different way. I think HR and talent leaders, business leaders, are keenly aware of the impact that this virus may have and is having, I guess is a better way to say it, on our society. But I just want you to know that everybody here at Talent Unfiltered is thinking about you, and you are definitely on our minds. We hope that working remotely, you have the opportunity to take advantage of some of the content that we put out. And remember, if you like it, like, subscribe, hit the notification buttons on any of the platforms that you're either watching or listening to this show on. So enough about that right now. I know we're going to talk about it a little more actually with Lou. So I want to take a minute here and I want to introduce Lou, I think that he is someone that if you are involved in talent in any way, if you are a recruiter, if you spend time on LinkedIn, if you've been to LinkedIn Talent Connect, you know who Lou Adler is. Lou is the founder of the Adler Group. He's also the developer of a performance-based model of hiring. He's an Amazon top 10 author, an author of books like Hire with Your Head, and the essentials of getting hiring, or the essentials of hiring and getting hired. Sorry about that, Lou. Ladies and gentlemen, Lou Adler. Lou, welcome in.
Happy to be here, Ron. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. So I want to get started talking about what's on everybody's mind, which is the coronavirus, COVID-19. It has impacted our society in ways that I don't think people were prepared for. In fact, I don't think as a society, at least here in the States, that we were really prepared for it in terms of dealing with it and responding to it. Having said that, I do think that it could have some significant impacts on hiring, specifically the process. And I'd like to get your take on that, about how you see this affecting how companies get done what they have to get done. Because even with a little bit of a recession, we're probably going to still continue to hire, at least at some pace. And I'd love to hear how you think this might impact that.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of levels of impact that we could feel. The one that we even had a meeting this morning for my personal business, which is we train companies on how to hire people. That's recruiters and hiring managers. Frequently, these people never have enough time to do it right. So I said, well, let's assume we have a 60 to 90 day impact here. Let's use that to really get good at hiring. So that's, and it's very selfish and in some way myopic from our perspective, because that's what we do. On the other hand, there could be an impact bigger than that says, hey, there's going to be some industries that are affected in a non-positive way. And if you're in an industry where you're still going to do hiring, well, then let's find people who are really good in these other industries, so you can kind of say, hey, work at our company because we have a better long-term trajectory than what your situation is. So I think there's going to be this churn that goes on both from company A to company B, which one's better, which one's not so good. So that's a positive if you're the hiring company, and not so positive if you're the laying off company. But nonetheless, there's still a demand for great talent. And if you're a good person, you'll be able to find a position. On the other hand, I also contend that we might be overreacting, but I'm not sure. So this is really an unknown here. We don't really have a clear vision of what's happening. And my son called, because that's his picture from 40 years ago or so. And he said, the one thing, he was just at Trader Joe's today, and he said the whole store is going to close down if one employee gets sick. And that's something I hadn't thought of. I said, oh, one employee gets sick, the whole store closes down. So I said, why is everybody rushing and panic and buying all this stuff? But now I can see, there's going to be an impact on the supply chain. So we have hiring issues, we have personal issues, we have all our people, we have clients that we've done online training, and now they want to do, they want to do live training, and now they want to move to online training. So I think there are going to be some repercussions. And the big thing is, I don't think we know what we don't know. And that to me is the unvariable. So we kind of then overdo it, and it's probably safer to overdo it. So I don't know if that's a good answer to your question.
Well, no, I think it's
figure it out.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great answer. I would say that at least what we're seeing on our side from clients is a rush to protect their staff. So they're going to remote working situations. And in some cases, these are companies that have not traditionally worked in that way. So I'd like to, just before we go any further, get your thought on this. I have a theory that the more companies that go to the remote work model during this crisis, whether that's for 60, 90, or maybe perhaps even longer, I don't think we, as you said, know yet. But the more companies that go to this, do you see them becoming less afraid or less resistant to that idea, and in turn opening up opportunities to potentially hire employees that maybe they wouldn't have considered in the past?
Well, let me take it to a more selfish perspective, but it relates to your point, Ron. I've always advocated that no candidate should ever be interviewed in person first, live. And in fact, I'm not even sure you want to do it on video. So I've always advocated the use of an exploratory phone screen, whether you're a recruiter interviewing a candidate first or a hiring manager meeting a candidate before you invite the person on site. There's a lot of reluctance with respect to hiring managers to do that until you explain the benefits of it. Number one, you don't have to waste time meeting candidates whom you're never going to hire in person. And there's a lot of logistics activity just inviting candidates on site, scheduling the interviews, making sure everyone's there, being prepared. On the other hand, a half-hour exploratory phone screen, you schedule some time, easy to do on your calendar. We have a scripted interview and you ask these questions and you decide, hey, candidate, you're a great candidate, I'd like to invite you on site. Or the candidate says not interested. Irrespective of that, great time savings from going, I'll just call it exploratory phone screen versus an on-site interview. That
Sure.
to me has a huge benefit, minor in the scheme of life in terms of remote workforce, but from a practical standpoint, which is my interest, is how do you hire great people? It's a good step. And if the candidate agrees to invest time in going on site, that's a positive. If the hiring manager phone screens the person, says, yes, this is a good person I want to see, you're already halfway there to a decision. And I call these people who go on site semifinalists. Before you're just going on site and meeting someone who isn't interested in the job, isn't committed, hiring manager's not prepared. All of that noise is taken away by conducting the phone screen. So I think that's a very positive benefit. And we see candidates, I just talked to a client on Wednesday. We're moving all to exploratory phone screens. When I met him in person a month ago, half the managers were reluctant to do it. Oh, we don't want to do it. They're going to do it and they're going to come back a month from now or 3 months from now and say, wow, I'm so glad we did it. So that's a positive that I can experience. The other positive, yes, it seems logical that they would see it and they have to work their way through it, how you do it, all those things. So in some way, I think it's probably a positive, but there's other negative repercussions. So, but all I could say from my perspective is conducting an exploratory phone screen is great. You have to do it now, and you'll discover that it's a great thing for minimizing bias, increasing diversity hiring, not spending time with people who aren't going to take the job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think just from that standpoint alone, it's a huge positive.
You know, I want to back up now and kind of take this a different direction, because you talk about some things in that explanation that you just gave that I think there are terms in there that people have trouble with. You started your career as a systems engineer at Hughes Aircraft, and you have seen a lot of change in the way we find, attract, and hire candidates into organizations. But there are a lot of people who fall into the trap of saying, well, everything's different now. Everything is much different. Candidates don't engage. Candidates don't talk to me. It's hard to get those exploratory phone screens that you're talking about. In your estimation, what is as effective today as it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, in terms of skill sets or techniques that recruiters should be using, and traps maybe that they should try to steer clear of?
Okay.
I know that's a big question, but
no, it's a simple question. 50 years ago, we used this thing. Some of you guys don't know what it is. It's called a phone. It's now this. But the reality of it is nothing has changed. All these tools have actually backfired. We now, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, before the internet, it was hard to change jobs. When you got aggravated, you didn't just change. You had to find a job posting in the classified or the Sunday career section, and you had to put a resume together, and you had to mail the resume, and you had to wait for a call. And by that time, if the job was miserable on the day you started looking, 3 weeks later when you got a call, it wasn't as bad. Things ironed out. So people didn't change jobs for stupid reasons. It had to be fundamental reasons. Today, you get aggravated. I had a bad day at the office. My boss yelled at me. I'm going to find a job on a weekend, and you give a notice next week if you're any good. I think we've created a situation with job boards that makes it easier to change jobs. And now companies are spending more time filtering out candidates who should never apply to begin with. So you look at all the changes that have taken place. The one that you really look at of people who get hired, only 1/3 are fully satisfied with their work. Been that way for 30 years. Gallup does a study, it's Gallup Satisfaction Survey. Another third are partially engaged, and another third are totally unengaged. Hasn't changed at all. It's because people make short-term decisions for stupid reasons. And in the olden days, with that phone, most people didn't talk about the job. So my whole feeling is, hey, automating a bad process is not a good thing. I tend to find people, I have all my hiring managers, hey, tell me what this work is. I'll find a dozen or 12 people who are excited about doing that work, and I'll spend more time with fewer people. So I have what I call high touch, let's call it, I'm going to say more, I spend more time with fewer people. It's a high touch hiring model where I clearly explain the job to people. The hiring manager clearly explains the job. They talk to each other. We sell the conversation about the career move, not, hey, let's go as fast as we can trying to sell and close this deal. And to me, that's why, as far as I'm concerned, nothing has changed for the better. So technology has actually backfired when it comes to hiring.
Let me ask you this.
That's my position. I'm going to stick to it.
You know, and some people are going to agree with that, and some people are going to completely disagree with that.
Let me tell you, anybody who disagrees, Ron, is wrong. They don't have a clue what hiring is all about.
Well, you know, I have enough gray in my beard to know exactly what you're talking about in terms of approaching it from an older standpoint. When I got in the business, I started out as a recruiter, as a full desk recruiter, and I truly the phone was my friend. It's how I learned. But I guess what I'm trying to get to, and where I want to take this next, is how do you take someone who has not grown up communicating the way you or I did and get them to understand the benefits of being more engaged in this way, or finding unique ways to get out there? Because part of what you're talking about almost sounds, that high touch, almost sounds like executive search. And I'm not sure that some people who are on the front line are going to make that connection, that that's the right thing for them to do. Does my question make sense?
Yeah. Well, let's go this. What drives personal satisfaction on the job? It's the work that people do. So how many people, if you ask a candidate, I don't care if the person's an entry-level customer success manager with 2 years experience, do you really know what this job is before you take the job? I bet most of them don't know the job. They just have a general sense of it. When they get in the job, I said, oh my God, I didn't know I had to actually work with customers and actually resell. Number one, have them make sure they understand the product and also sell them additional services and support we have. I didn't know that was the job. Well, so I don't care if you're executive search or not, if at the core level of human beings, whether it's a 22-year-old or a 55-year-old, that person gets satisfied by the actual work they do. And if you, the recruiter, offer a job without you knowing what that work is and what intrinsically motivates that candidate, the probability of that person being satisfied in the job is probably 30%. 30% will be partially satisfied, 30% will be aggravated. Why did I take this job? That's what the statistics show. I don't care if you're 22 or 102, because now probably 102-year-old people are getting jobs. So I think, to me, it's just understanding of how people change jobs, people take jobs, and how people excel when they're in the job. Human nature did not change because of the internet. Darwin's theory of evolution, now you might disagree with Darwin's theory of evolution, I happen to agree with it. It did not change. People did not fundamentally change. What changed is it's now easier to change jobs. And are companies less loyal? Yeah, maybe they are. But human nature is not any different. Hey, if you give somebody a good job who they intrinsically motivated to do, and you get a support structure that allows them to be successful, a manager that develops and promotes them, you're going to have a successful career. And to me, if the candidate doesn't know that, if the recruiter doesn't know that, and the hiring manager doesn't know those issues, they shouldn't be making a decision.
Sure, but let me challenge you a bit there, because it almost sounds like you're advocating for no technology. And I want to make sure we're clear about that. You're saying that technology has complicated the process because it made it easier for a person to make a decision about changing jobs.
No, I didn't say that.
Is that correct?
No, I didn't say that. I said it makes it easier to find another job and make superficial reasons to take it. I didn't say it was easier to change jobs. It's just easier to find one. Today I get aggravated. And then the company is in a hurry to hire someone quickly. So when it's always about what they get on the start date.
Sure.
Okay, what's the money? What's the title? What's the location? And yeah, I'm good. Let's take it. I had this philosophy I call win-win hiring, which uses technology. But I hire for the anniversary date, not the start date. The anniversary date is a year from now. The candidate says, yeah, I'm glad I took that job a year ago. And the hiring manager says, I'm glad I hired that person. That is a hard decision to make when you focus on the anniversary date, not the start date. And you do need technology to pull that off. And I don't want to minimize that. So I do use technology to find people who would find this job a career move a year from now.
Okay. Well, let me go just a different direction then. So, and I'm sorry if I misquoted you, but
no, you can misquote. Yeah, I get misquoted all the time. I even misquote myself. So we're good.
Well, I'm hoping you'll do this again, so I don't really want to misquote you very often. But my thought here is two things. First of all, you say you use technology. What is the role of technology in recruiting in your mind? And secondly, when you talk about messaging, because so many people are beginning to adopt this idea, are really knee deep in the idea of recruitment marketing, of building pipelines of talent by having indirect recruiting efforts, passive recruiting efforts running all the time, whether it's programmatic job ads or whatever. What is your thought on the technology and on the messaging piece of this? Are we overcomplicating it, or are we making it too simple? I would love to hear.
No, I think all of those tools are important. It's what the messaging is about. You have to build a pipeline of candidates. But when I look at a candidate, so I call it, let's source semifinalists. A semifinalist is someone who's performance qualified, meaning he or she can do the work, which means you have to define the work, and it's not skills, it's the work. A semifinalist is someone who's performance qualified and has what I call the achiever pattern. The achiever pattern clearly indicates the person's in the top half, top third, top quartile, or better of their peer group. If they meet those two criteria, high probability the hiring manager would see that person and say, as they conduct a phone screen, oh, there's a good person. So to me, I have to build pipelines using technology, all of this programmatic advertising, all those things to build a pipeline. I have no problem with that. However, when I go into that pipeline, there's a third criteria of a semifinalist, is that person sees this job as a career move. So now I do my sourcing, my whatever searching I'm going to do in that database or my pipeline. I don't need the pipeline. I can go to LinkedIn. It's already got the pipeline there. Irrespective of that, what I do is I then say, okay, this job looks like a career move. I talked about one spot that I placed a senior level VP in a Midwestern city, which I'll leave nameless. It wasn't a great place. The job was awesome. So I look, who would find this job as a career move? Well, it turned out to be, it was a VP level job for a $500 million company, manufacturing company. So I looked for people in cities around that place who were directors or senior directors who would see the job as a career move. So therefore, they were performance qualified. They had managed big companies. They had the achiever pattern. They spoke at conferences, or they won awards, or they had the right academics, prestigious, whatever it was. They had things that indicate this was a top performer, and they would see the job as a career move. Well, I couldn't have done that without technology to figure that out. But I then use logic and human nature and common sense to say, okay, who would be the right people? If I'm only going to talk to half a dozen people, spend more time with fewer candidates, but put a high-touch approach on it, I found some good people. Closed the deal in 15, I think it was, we had candidates in 2 to 3 weeks using that model. So it's this combination of common sense, logic, human nature, and technology to pull that off. And all those other things you've said are the beginning of the solution, but they're not the final solution.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to spend. I want to move on to something else. But I real quickly, the example you gave was a senior level vice president of someone who was at a higher level, I think. How does this work in commoditized roles? Because it seems to me that a lot of the jobs that we get as technology has improved. Sourcing would be an example of something that could become commoditized, even more so in the market. How does this approach work when you have a commoditized, high volume kind of hiring that you have to do? We have a client, for example, that needs to hire 1,000 sales and customer service people in the field in the insurance industry every year. How does that apply to, how does that technique apply to them?
Okay, so let's kind of understand it. And I'll give you an example. Let me give you one that's a humorous example. It happened about 20 years ago now. I was working with Yellow Pages. At that time, it was owned by Verizon. And they had to hire 20-year-old kids to work in a call center in Dallas, right by the airport, DFW, to work on renewing Yellow Page subscriptions. If some of you people might be too young, I don't even know what the Yellow Pages are, but look that up and it'll be this historic thing.
It's kind of actual paper Yelp, right? I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
And they had little ads that were 2x2 inch ads, and they were $75. And these people, all they had to do was call people on campaigns around the country and get their existing providers to renew their Yellow Page subscription. That was the job. And they hired 75 people every quarter or every other month to go through the training program. So they called me up and said, Lou, we have our August training program. We don't have any people for it. And this 20-year-old just had to have a junior college degree or just about graduating from JC. At that time, I said, okay, I'm going to advertise based on what those people want. So it was pure marketing. So I talked to we had one woman in our office. She was, I think, 20 or 21. I just asked, what are you guys going to do this weekend? I called a couple other people, friends had kids. I said, I want to just talk to your children. They said, why do you want? I said, I told them why. So we came up with this ad, and it was when the Austin Powers movie was coming out. So this, and all of them were going to see it. So this was the ad we put in Monster, and it was for a Yellow Page ad. And it said, yeah, baby, yeah, this entry-level sales job in Dallas is shagadelic. And it was number 3 on Monster, and they filled that thing up the next day.
Really?
It was marketing. And this is the thing. Why would you post the job that doesn't appeal? I just wanted, what are these kids going to do? I knew it was a sales job, and it was annoying. So I said, do that. So I'm always understanding what motivates that person to move forward. And it's got to be compelling. Sometimes it's topical. Sometimes it's entertainment kind of a thing. But I try to understand that audience. And this, I got to tell you guys, this is marketing 101. This isn't rocket science. And just to give you a sense, when Ron said that I worked on guidance systems at Hughes, he was actually wrong. That was my second job, but it was just too many things. I actually worked on a nuclear missile program, my first job. I didn't like it. Then I went to Hughes Aircraft Company. I was still a guidance and control systems engineer, but I worked on a rocket ship. This is not rocket science. It's basic common sense marketing. Send messages to people you want to hire and talk to people. I did something else in the insurance industry for a call center. I said, why do people take this job? I just asked, I said, tell me about your best people. And they were trying to come up with advertising. 5,000 person call center for AIG Insurance. It was probably 15 years ago. Maybe it was 12 because it was when AIG had some problems. Irrespective of that, I said, why do the best people do this job? I said, let's talk to them. I want to talk to people who do this work. We'll create a message. Security, safety, be there, good benefits, be there when the kids are home from school. Fine, that's what we're going to write in. So the point, and then one guy said at the time, he said, I'm going to leave. I'm interviewing on campus. It was actually a school on campus at UCLA. I said, what? You just talked about this as a call center job for women who have kids and they want to come home? He said, yes, but it's also a way to get their license, their securities license. So I said, okay, well, for that group, we'll talk about this is your first step in a 6-figure career to get your security license. The other one is safe and secure. So you're targeting the audience. I then asked them this question: who is the best candidates? He said, the kids who get their insurance license are terrible. He said the women were the ones who did it. Nonetheless, you just talk to whom you want to hire and write messages that drive them to motivate them to do what they want to do. That's how you use the same technology, the same concepts at scale. Or one VP in the Midwest somewhere who wants to move their career faster.
Sure. Last thing I'm going to talk about, you recently wrote an article on LinkedIn, and it was an open letter to everyone who struggles hiring techies. And in it, you're talking about 2 different kinds of candidates. One is the right candidate, and one is the right fit. And what we find is that a lot of time in STEM hiring, so science, technology, engineering, math, people get hung up on a particular education or a particular background or a particular skill set that's demonstrable in their resume or in past work. Is that the wrong approach? And if so, how should companies look at hiring people in what is probably the most competitive sectors that we have today?
I'm going to go back to, yeah, baby, yeah, this job is shagadelic. So I just did a search for senior developer. I didn't do a search. I did a job profile for senior developer for a company that's building this big infrastructure product that has e-commerce and security issues associated with it. And the job posting had a bunch of skills and experiences in DevOps and heavy Ruby.
I've got one of those you could work on right now if you're interested.
Well, and I just said, why do they need all this stuff? What are they going to do? And it was DevOps, web Amazon Web Services and all the kind of structure they had. I said, so if someone can do this work and build an infrastructure where they're using Amazon Web Services, they're understanding all the database infrastructure, and they can build it at scale, that would be the right person, right? And he said, absolutely. So I said, okay, we'll post things that say, hey, this is what you're going to do. You're going to rebuild an e-commerce system that's going to be using these kinds of services. But I focused on what they did with what they have, not what they have. And I got the hiring manager to agree, this is the work they have to do. The hiring manager was such a witted guy, so he kind of knew where I was going with the whole process. He actually thought of it ahead of time. But the point is, you don't need to put all the skills down. Take one high-level skill that they have to do. Amazon Web Services build DevOps that support a complex e-commerce system, online system with delivery. That's pretty big. That's pretty attractive. That's how you're going to attract someone. You're not going to attract someone saying must have 10 years experience. You got to attract someone and say, hey, this is the work you're going to do, and it's important work, and here's why. That's how you're going to attract someone, not by listing skills, but by making it a career opportunity. And that goes back to performance qualified, achiever pattern, and career opportunity. You got to look at this as a win-win hiring from the day the person thinks about this job, the day he or she accepts an offer, and a year from now, would they find this job compelling and interesting? If you do, you're going to win. But you got to understand your candidate before you get talking to them, and you got to deliver the goods. You got to deliver on the promise, and that's the hardest part.
Excellent. Lou, we're about out of time here. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and thank you very, very much for being the first guest here on the very first episode of Talent Unfiltered. It
might turn out to be your last episode if you show me.
Well, yeah, I'm hoping that's not the way it goes, but you never know. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you and would like to engage you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I would say, well, you could certainly find me on LinkedIn and just connect with me on LinkedIn or send me a message on LinkedIn, or info@performancebasedhiring.com. info@performancebasedhiring.com. It'll get to my desk somehow. So good luck hiring great people, and thank you, Ron, for inviting me.
No, thank you, sir, and I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully, if we do more than one episode, hopefully you'll come back at some point.
Okay, you got a deal. Thank you.
All right, good. Thanks. Have a great day. Everybody, Lou Adler, we appreciate him taking time to meet with us today. If you liked what we did here today and you want to stay up to date, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on your platform of choice. You can also connect with me or the show on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Don't forget to join us on March 23rd when Marinus Van Driel, a partner at Aon, joins us to talk about some exciting ways that you can use data to make better hires. Till then, peace.